Killing It 5-3. Good morning. Thanks for hanging out. It's the Danny Hill Experience. And you know what? It's Thursday, which means we get our good friends from Campbell Witten in the studio. Sam, Clayton, Jesse, the number 334-3000 if you need them. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Hey.
All right, let's talk about drugs.
If you insist.
Let's talk about DUIs for a little bit. I know that everyone assumes DUIs and drugs and all that stuff. We're talking about alcohol. All is our alcohol. But now we have a whole new thing that's popping up, which even beyond marijuana and the marijuana use that's going on, is the prescription drugs. It seems like people are doing Xanax and Zoloft and Propecia for their hair like crazy. I don't know what they're doing.
Does that work?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not for me, obviously. But what? How do they test for this? How do they know? Can they pop you? Can you lose your license for being on a prescription drug that may cause drowsiness? I mean, what if it's just an antibiotic?
Well, if you notice now, like every prescription bottle says, don't drive or operate heavy equipment.
Don't do this.
So it could be something like, prescription strength ibuprofen or,
Tylenol codeine or something.
Right. But a lot of people assume that, okay, because I have a prescription for this, it's legal for me to have it, which is true.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's necessarily legal to drive with it. Alcohol is legal.
Yeah.
You can go down to the store and buy that. You just can't drive while you're under the influence of alcohol. So people, I think, sometimes have this false sense of security. Oh, I have a prescription that means I'm okay, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're okay to drive.
They also assume that their doctor will tell them not to drive if they're not supposed to drive while taking this medication, which you would think that would happen, but we see cases all the time. Doctor prescribes something, and they're like, did the doctor tell you not to drive? Nope, doctor never said anything.
Yeah.
Of course, if you ever asked a doctor, like, of course I told him not to.
Yeah, of course. I told him the whole time. Never
It's
drive.
probably in the fine print that came with your prescription, along with the 20 pages of liability waivers and disclaimers.
Reads every word.
Yeah,
of that.
everybody reads all that stuff.
Yeah, I saw
Just
one
give me
the
the
other day
pill.
where it was like, don't drink grapefruit juice. And I was like, that's pretty specific. Like, why would you?
Yeah, I've seen that one too.
You know what I mean? And I
No
go,
explanation on that. Like,
like, I don't know. Okay, to avoid excess sun exposure. What am I taking? Like, what?
Crawl back under that rock you came out from
Yeah,
under,
exactly.
Danny.
Don't eat and don't go to the sun. All right, well, I guess that'll help.
Don't eat for 7 days.
With my hair problem, I don't know.
Right. Well,
It's
yeah,
like a weight loss pill, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
a magic weight loss pill.
No one will think you're ugly and fat if you don't see anybody. Congratulations.
Well, yes, but we were getting a little sidetracked here. But no,
Yeah.
you're right. It's another thing where the officers are trained to recognize the symptoms of some of these substances. So they have these, not field sobriety tests necessarily, but what I'm talking about are the evidences of drug use or some kind of central nervous system stimulant, or if you're on an opiate, or there are different symptoms that they can recognize. They're trained as drug recognition experts. Some of them are. So it's something, that's how they see it. They don't have you blow into a device and it tells you how much Zoloft you took.
So it's just them saying, I think this guy's definitely on some sort of pills and we're going to give him a DUI. Now, how do they have to prove that? If it's
They'll get a chemical test. They can take you to the hospital for
okay.
a blood test. If you refuse a test, then you're going to have issues with your driver's license.
But of course, the crime is actually being under the influence of that. Is actually impairing your driving. And so, fortunately, in these cases, oftentimes we'll have CHP pullover. So we'll be able to get a dash cam video and we can actually look and see what the driving pattern was. And in a lot of these cases, they're just driving down the road. The only reason they got pulled over was because they didn't use an indicator or their tag was expired or whatever. Something that doesn't indicate you're under the influence at all.
And we see them a lot when there's like a little fender bender or something in traffic, and then they ask the driver, oh, are you on any prescription medication? Well, yeah, I took my prescriptions last night. And then when they do the blood test, it shows up. There's a positive, but they don't have it doesn't give them the number. There's no magic number like 0.08 for these,
for
these
alcohol.
substances.
Or because it's 2 a.m. I mean, a lot of these, you'd say, well, why would the officers pull them over if they weren't doing anything wrong? I think police, and maybe rightfully so, I don't know, but assume that
Majority of someone's messed
if
up.
you're out
yeah.
at 2 a.m., there's a high probability that someone may be drinking or something, so they'll look for reasons to pull people over, and then as soon as they come up, they're looking to see if this person appears to be under the influence, whether they smell any odor of alcohol or anything like that. So, yes, it doesn't always have to be a really strong reason for them to pull you over.
And if we don't have a level to judge it by, I mean, you could have prescription drugs in your system, I would assume, for a while. I've taken a pill before, like the Z-Pack, for instance, where they're like, well, I'll just take these 5 pills, but it'll stay in your system for 14 days.
Right.
And then you go, well, am I not supposed to drive for 14 days off the Z-Pack? And they're like, you should be fine. Well, I don't know what does that mean? Should be fine. And that's not one that impairs you because it's an antibiotic, but it's those type of situations where you could have something in your system.
Well, this is the issue with marijuana as well, because marijuana will stay in your system for a long period of time. And so what they will do sometimes is they'll get a confirmatory test from the lab to actually ascertain what the levels are, to give a better indicator of how recently did he actually take this drug.
But they don't do that automatically, though. Okay, they will just get a yes or no test. Does this test show any of the following? Amphetamines. They'll look for THC, which is what's in marijuana. They'll look for different substances that are in a lot of different prescription medication. So they'll just have a yes or no on the test. So people will go to their arraignment without a lawyer and they don't know. And they'll say, oh, yeah, well, your test was positive for these things. And they think, oh, it was positive. That means I'm in trouble. And in there are a lot of lawyers out there that won't even dig any deeper than that. Oh, well, your test was positive, and then they end up convincing you to plead to something. So
and you're like,
no, that there is more to be done than this. A positive or negative doesn't tell the whole story.
Well, there's another side to this as well. We've seen a lot of cases where they know that, let's say it takes 30 minutes for their medication to kick in. So, and they know they have a 10-minute drive home from work. So they'll say, their daily routine, and this is maybe even doctor approved and everything, that may have been doing for 10 years, that when they leave for work, they take their medication. By the time they get home or whatever, it'll kick in about 15 minutes after they get home. But then something happens on the way home. They get pulled over or there's some sort of fender bender accident. By the time they get tested, it's, even the field sobriety test and all that, it's sort of kicked in. And so there's all different ways this can go. And the question is, at the time they were driving, were they under the influence? And there's, even with alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, there's a lot of factors to look at that. Is it still in their system? Has it hit their bloodstream yet? Is it still in their stomach? There's a lot of different areas to look at.
What's the number one prescription drug that people are getting popped with right now? Is it antidepressants?
A lot of Xanax.
A lot of Xanax.
Yeah, I don't know the actual number, but I see that one very, very frequently. A lot of Xanax.
Yeah, it seems like because you hear about that a lot with people taking.
Right, antidepressants are widely prescribed, and most people can function just fine with them if they're taking their prescription dose. Mm-hmm. But if you get in an accident, and everybody gets in an accident every once in a while. I mean, this happens very commonly to most drivers. They have a fender bender at some point in their life. They're going to run into a light pole in a parking lot, or somebody's going to rear end them at an intersection, and they're never questioned until that moment. Oh, what kind of medication are you taking? And if you are taking something and you function normally with it, the fact that you had the fender bender is going to be what makes the DA or the police suspect you of a crime and accuse you of a crime.
Does this happen more often with the elderly? Because it seems like you hit a certain age, 40, 50, whatever, and you start taking pills, and you're taking blood pressure pills and cholesterol pills, and you're taking stuff on a pretty regular basis that may not affect you like a Xanax, but do those come into play where they go, look, Your Honor, he had 7 different types of pills in his system at the time, and none of them individually do anything, but...
Well, I guess it just depends on what combination of medication you're taking. But I do take issue with you saying that 40 or 50 is elderly.
Yeah, very old. Very old. The elderly. Wait, you know what? We're getting there. We're old. And then 60, okay, we'll say 70. 70 is elderly, right? Maybe. But that's my point is it seems like the older you get, the more prescription drugs you're on, the more stuff you're doing. And, you could be doing your thing and going to work, living your life, and... you're fine, and all of a sudden you have a blood pressure issue. Because I've seen that with people where their blood pressure, all of a sudden they've been taking the same medicine for 10 years and something's different in their body, and all of a sudden they're lightheaded and they don't feel right and they're off, and...
Well, the other thing, the officers will use the fact that someone is nervous and has their heartbeat is over 100 as evidence that they're under the influence. And these people have just been... I mean, everyone, when you see the lights come on behind you, your heart rate goes up a little bit. And so these people,
it's scary.
To me, it's just ridiculous. They're like, well, he's clearly under the influence because he's nervous and he seems, what is he stressed out about? Like,
I'm pulled over.
He's being
I don't have an extra $400 to pay for whatever I'm about to pay for.
And that cop doesn't have a body camera, so
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so when you're dealing with stuff like this and you're trying to get this, so let's talk a little bit about marijuana. Obviously, marijuana is now a prescription in California, may become a legal thing in the future, but whether it's legal, prescription, illegal, you can't have it in your system while driving. But have we figured out a way to judge if someone's too high to drive?
Well, they're going to look at a lot of circumstances. What was your driving pattern, et cetera. They
Yeah.
can look at the levels, like Sam mentioned a minute ago. Check the levels, how much THC is in your blood. We measure this in nanograms per milliliter, so it's a very small measurement, but we have a way to look at it. But there's no magic .08 in California. Other states have experimented with coming up with some kind of a threshold, like the .08 alcohol limit.
Yeah.
There are. I
we'll
think
probably-
Colorado might be one of the states that was talking about implementing a standard, but you can't do these clinical studies. Most of these studies are done in some kind of a scientific environment where you're actually testing someone's motor function and their response to the requirement to do something quickly, their reflexes, etc., while under the influence of different levels of alcohol. If you were trying to do this with some kind of drugs, you would be breaking the law while using these drugs. So
Yeah,
if
trying
you're-
to
if
figure
you're like
it
in
out.
a university, you're not going to get a grant from the federal government that prohibits the use of marijuana to do a study on the effects of
the effects of
marijuana. on a
marijuana,
driver.
yeah. That seems
So
confusing.
there are that hasn't been completely cleared up yet, and obviously methamphetamine or some things that are illegal
yeah,
everywhere.
there's
They don't have those. They haven't done those tests.
But what's most likely going to happen is we're going to have a per se level in California like they have in Washington, like the DUI. I mean, in Washington, they have 5 nanograms per milliliter is kind of their level. So if you test at that, even if you can do all the sobriety tests, you seem like you're okay to drive, that's enough to get a drug DUI there. That's probably what eventually will happen in California as well.
And what is that? How 5 nanograms? What is that? I mean, we know alcohol.
It's a very small,
like,
very
it's
small
like-
amount.
It's like doing two. It's like 2
Hey,
beers.
we're lawyers. We're not scientists over here.
Yeah.
We study the science. We study the science for these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
But if you ask me to indicate with my fingers, it's about that
It's about
much.
that much.
You can see it as well on the radio as you can
yes,
in my
I
hand.
can. It's very small.
And what Sam was saying, that's kind of what they did with the alcohol DUIs, is that there's plenty of people at a .08 are perfectly capable of driving. But they've determined that there's enough people that are impaired at that level that they're not going to worry about, that's the law. So whether you are able to drive at that level or not able to drive at that level, it doesn't matter. That's
Wait,
the
what
law.
was the first threshold? Was it 2.0? Was that what it was? Or
I don't know.
1.8?
I think it was .15, and then it went down, and at some point it was .10 for a long time, and then I think it went down to .08.
That's been some time ago, though.
Yeah.
It's been .08 for as long as all of us have been driving.
Back then, it was basically like, hey, can your friend drive home? Or they used to be much more lenient on drinking and driving. They're very there's been a constant push to crack down on it because it is dangerous. I mean, there's a lot
it's
of
very
People die all the time in DUI accidents, so they have to be.
Well,
strict
again,
about
if you're dealing with any of these situations, there's so many things to talk about. The number 334-3000, Campbell Witten, Sam, Clayton, Jesse, thank you so much for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next week.